Okay, so hi, my name is Alexa. I am a senior biology and German major at Case Western Reserve University, and I just wanted to make a little video kind of about how I studied for the MCAT and how I got a good score. So, I apologize if the sound quality is not great. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm a senior. I took the MCAT on July 20th last summer, so the summer between my junior and senior years. I didn't take it earlier because I'm taking a gap year, so if you were wondering. So yeah, I ended up scoring a 522, which I was very excited about. I did study a lot over the summer, so I thought I'd share how I got the score. I know not the same thing works for everybody, but this is just what I did to study. So yeah, I'll start at the beginning, I guess. So I planned on starting to study in early April, which, like I said, I tested on July 20th, so it's a few months in advance. All that I actually ended up doing was I took the next step half-length diagnostic exam is the first thing that I did. And I was trying to find my score. I can't remember what I got. I think it was a 502, maybe a 504 on the diagnostic, which I was very happy with considering that was kind of my starting base level. And when I did that, the next thing I did was kind of looking at percentiles and knowing myself. I tried to set a goal for myself of what I would like to score, because I feel like I work better if I have something I'm aiming for in practice exams. So the goal I set was 515, and I knew if I got that, I'd be really happy and I'd be in a really good place to apply. And I thought that, given the time I had to study, that was doable. So the next thing that I did was I tried to make a study plan for myself. I had read online, I think, that you should study like 400 to 500 hours total. I mean, obviously it depends a lot on the person. I didn't count my hours. I don't know how much I ended up studying for, but it was probably more than that. So yeah, I guess the first plan I made, so I went through, when I did the diagnostic exam, it gave me kind of how I scored in each of the topics that the AAMC has. They have all these different topics like 3B, 7A, like all of these things you're supposed to know. And I ended up making a schedule starting in May, I guess, actually, starting in April, of what I would do each day, and then increasing my time, what I would do over the summer by topic. That was a really bad idea. I would not recommend it because when I got my study books, which are the Kaplan books, they aren't organized by subject or by the topic number, which makes sense because the topic numbers go across different subjects. So it was kind of a complete waste of time to make this. So I would recommend getting your books first, making a schedule based off of what the chapters are and how they actually organize the content. So I immediately got so the next thing I did was I ordered books. I had seen a lot of different things online about which books you should get. Some people saying in the forums like, oh, you should get Princeton Review for this subject, you should do this other thing for this other subject. But then I'd also heard that in the end, if you're getting one of the big name books, they're all good. It doesn't make that much of a difference. There's not a magic formula to get a perfect score by having the right books. So I ended up going with Kaplan just because they were still expensive, but they were cheaper than some of the other big ones like Next Step or Exam Crackers, and they're a big name, so I thought it'd be something good to go with. I have my whole set right here. There are 7 books total for all of the different subjects. So biology, biochemistry, behavioral sciences, which is psychology and sociology, organic chemistry, gen chemistry, physics, and then CARS, which, if you don't know, is critical analysis and reasoning. So sorry that I keep looking not at the camera, I'm looking at the screen. So I made my schedule. I did not stick to my schedule, namely because I did not study in April and May while I was still in classes, which I think it is definitely hard to plan to study while in classes because it's hard. I mean, exams come up and you don't study, and the next thing you know, for me, the semester was over, and that's when I really started studying, was mid to early May. I don't remember the exact date. I finished my exams here. I went home for a few weeks before I did research here in Cleveland over the summer, so I started studying once I was home. And kind of my goal was trying to get through about, at first and through the whole summer, I was trying to get through about 2 chapters a day of the Kaplan books. Each book, I believe, has 12 chapters. So I was trying to do 1.5 technically is what I needed to do, but 2 was me trying to kind of catch up from what I hadn't done before. And yeah, basically every time I made a schedule, I never really stuck to it. My original plan was to have about 3 weeks at the end after finishing the books to review content, do lots of practice, and then also I'd built in more and more practice time while still finishing the books. That didn't end up happening. I finished the books completely a week and a half before my test date, which was not ideal, would not recommend that. I should have reevaluated my schedule a lot more sooner to realize that practice, I think, is the most important thing. Obviously, content review is a big deal and is necessary, but a lot of people would say that practice problems are really where you're going to get the help from, and then it could even be better to practice and just review the content that comes up that you don't know. So yeah, I really wished I had it like 1 more week, but obviously it ended up being fine, but that's just my advice. And I did take practice exams throughout the summer, so that's definitely my number 1 recommendation, I think, would be take practice exams. I took 5 total. I would do more if you had time and really go over them, and I'll get into that later. So back to kind of the beginning, I guess. So after I made my schedule that I did not stick to, the only thing I actually did do while still in April was I read this book, The Official Guide to the MCAT from the AAMC. I had heard that, this is from the AAMC. They're the ones who administer the test, or they design the test. So it's good to kind of read about the exam from what they say. It goes over really basic stuff like how to register, what the exam is really like, how they score, and then there also are a bunch of practice passages and problems, which I did not do those when I first read this. I just read it and I saved the problems for later, and I did end up doing them in my last week of studying just for some extra practice. So that's what I would recommend getting. I don't know how helpful it was. A lot of the information I had already read online and in other places, but it was good to have it in one place and know what the AAMC actually recommends. So there's that. The other thing that I started using well before April of last year was a podcast. It's called the MCAT Podcast by, I believe, MedEd Media Network, and it is in association with Next Step Test Prep. I started listening to that. I couldn't say exactly when, but I would listen to it. I do research in a lab here, and I would listen to that when doing some of the more tedious tasks to pass the time. And in the first many episodes, they go over more of the logistics, a lot of the stuff that you read in this book. I had already heard there about what testing is like, how many practice exams, which books you should buy, all things like that. And then later on, they do a lot of practice passages where they'll read passages on the podcast. They'll go through questions. They have people and they really explain the answers, and I thought that was really helpful because like I said, I stayed here in Cleveland all summer, did research full time, and I listened to that a lot. I ended up getting through every single episode of the podcast by the time my test date came up, and it was really helpful, especially when I was stressing out in the end, to be able to be practicing still while I was researching. So I really enjoyed that. They give a lot of good tips, help really emphasize important concepts. So yeah, that's something I would definitely recommend, and it's free. So yeah, that's always good. Okay, so once May actually came and I started studying, May was a little weird because I was at home, but once I got back on campus to do research for the summer, I definitely developed a routine. The original plan was to have 1 day off a week, which I've heard recommended, just that you are not thinking about studying all the time. That didn't end up happening. There was the occasional day I took off when like my friend visited me, but because I was behind from not studying in April and I was just trying to get through the books, I ended up studying every day. During the week, I would go to research until usually 4:30. I would go to the library, take a quick break, eat a snack. I'd have the same snack every day, cheese and crackers. So, and then usually by 5, sometimes a little bit later, I would start studying. So this would be with the books. I had a kind of rotation that I went through of the subjects to get through them all slowly. I would try to pair books together so for example, the organic chemistry book is definitely the shortest, and then something like biology or biochemistry is longer of chapters. So if I was trying to do 2 chapters in a day, I'd try to pair them together so that I wasn't doing 2 long chapters. And even within books, there's variation, but that was what I tried to do. So I usually try to start off with the longer chapters in the library to get those done first, because I was definitely more productive there than at home. And I definitely did not always get through 2 chapters, but I did my best. Something that I did do is, this was originally from my plan. I had like the weeks I was supposed to get things done by, which that didn't happen. But this is a list of the chapter sections from each subject, which I color-coded. And I broke up each chapter into 2 sections. That's kind of how my original plan did it, but I would cross these off. I had this bulletin on my wall over there, and I would cross them off when I did them each day. And I just thought that was nice because I could see what I was getting done, which was very helpful. And, it helps you stay motivated when you see later on you're getting towards the end. It's good to see. You can probably tell from here, the only 2 books I did not finish, the physics book, the last 3 chapters are just a math review. I plan on getting back to that, but I didn't end up doing it. I preferred to just do practice problems. I didn't feel my math needed that much help. If you don't know, you do not get a calculator on the MCAT, so you do have to do a lot of mental math, and you have scratch paper, but yeah, I didn't end up reading those chapters. The other book I did not finish was the Cars book. I'll get to Cars later because I definitely have a lot of advice there about things I would have done differently. But okay, so when I would actually go through the Kaplan books, I don't have the highlighters with me, but I had a different highlighter color for each book. I just thought that was kind of fun. I would take notes with a pencil, and I would highlight. So for example, this is the biology book, and I found a good page where I took a lot of notes. Sometimes I didn't take a lot of notes. I love biology, it's my major, so it was more fun for me to take notes here than in maybe Gen Chem. But I try to, so I'll just show. I'd highlight. Sometimes I highlighted a lot. I know it's better to highlight less than more, but I would maybe star things that they would say on the side that are important. I would draw out concepts. These are like the immune responses, just things that help to draw out. At the end of each section in the Kaplan books, there's practice conceptual questions. I would do those when I reached the end of the section, and I would check them after doing them to see if I got them right. And yeah, let me find a better example. So sometimes I wouldn't really take many notes at all. Like here, I didn't take any, but I tried. It definitely helps when you can draw out a concept or rewrite things in your own way. That definitely helps to make it more of an active process than just blindly reading and highlighting important sentences. Something else I would do, let me see if I can find it, is 2 times during each chapter. So I'd kind of find the halfway point, and I would make just a really short review on the side. After I did the concept check, I would just write a little list of things that had been gone over. I'd flip through really quickly and just write a little list to help me kind of think of what I'd already learned or what I should have learned. And I would take usually a really short break halfway through the chapters, or maybe, get a little food or something before continuing on, and then at the end of the chapter I would do another little review. And then for some of the books, like this is the physics book, they would have this nice equations page at the end. And something I did during and also at the end, once I made a big Quizlet of physics equations to memorize because you're not given them on the exam. On each of these pages, I would star the ones I thought were really important. There's ones I wrote conceptual next to that I thought were just concepts I knew rather than having to memorize an equation. And then I'd kind of note which equations I thought weren't as important because memorizing every single equation they give you in these books would have been a lot. So I guess that kind of brings me to flashcards and how I learned the content. By the time I was studying for this, I had already taken all of the prereq classes, so all of the physics, Gen Chem, OChem, biology. So I did have a foundation, and the books definitely helped me review everything and bring a lot of it back. So I didn't feel that I needed to sit down and learn everything because it was more of just bringing it back. But definitely for more of the things you had to memorize, I would use flashcards kind of selectively for certain things. So for the physics equations and some of the general chemistry equations that were important, I made a Quizlet that wasn't even that many cards, I don't think, just to memorize all the important ones by test day. And I tried to make that, I started making the flashcards maybe a month before and tried to, maybe even earlier for some of them, and tried to learn them as I was going slowly. I think I made one for polyatomic ions to remember. I made one where there's a lot of terms is psychology and sociology. I did my best with that. That's something I wished I had done a little better on, but I did, I believe, make some flashcards for those terms that I felt like I kept mixing up. Again, I didn't make one for every term in the book because that's insane and that's a lot. It'd be very hard to get through. For me, at least, I didn't have the time. So I just did terms that I struggled with remembering, ones that were similar to remember them. A big one is the amino acids. I already had flashcards made for that from classes I've taken where you've had to memorize those, but I went through those all the time because if there's one thing people will tell you, it's that you have to know the amino acids for the MCAT. You will be asked about them. If you're not, that's really rare. There'll probably be multiple questions about them. Having to know their properties, the structure, their abbreviations, just make sure you know them. If you know one thing, memorize those. Here's a resource that I did not use, is the Kaplan MCAT flashcards. I didn't buy these. I got them for free when I was a freshman for joining a club or something. So I probably wouldn't have bought them if I didn't already have them, but they have, the colors match the books, which is kind of nice. Each subject flashcards. So I planned on using these, and I used them a little bit. I was planning on, well before the exam, starting to go through these and making sure I knew all the terms, especially for psych and soc. And I did it a little bit, but I just didn't end up having the time. Something else I started doing and didn't end up doing all the way was making review pages for each chapter of the books. That's something I like to do for my classes to study, is to make like a cheat sheet, even if you don't get one, to kind of condense all the information into one page or 2 pages. So I started doing that for some of the books, but it was just taking too long and I didn't end up doing it. But I think that would be a good thing to do if you had time to help condense the information and get it where you can quickly reference things, or at least even just writing it a second time and having to condense it helps you learn. So, another resource I did not use but that I bought was this book. I couldn't really even tell you why I bought it. I honestly have barely even cracked it open. It looks like they go through concepts, but I know there are practice problems in here, so that's why I bought it, I think, is because I knew problems were important and I thought I would want some extra practice. But yeah, I didn't use it. I bought this really early on and I never used it. So okay, so that's the books. So yeah, that's basically how I got through all the books. I just went through them. I would advise getting them done sooner, but do what you need to do. It is good, I think, to review all of the material. So yeah, that's the book. So then I guess the main other thing that I did was practice exams before we get into what I kind of did my final week. So yeah, I took 5 total practice exams. The first one was the free Next Step full-length exam, because I didn't want to pay for another one. And then the other 4 were all the AAMC exams. That is another thing that I've heard, is that some people will say that if you do not take those 4 AAMC exams, you are not ready to take the MCAT. That's what some people say, just because those exams are made by the AAMC. They are the absolute closest to what you'll see on test day, so you're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't take those 4 exams and thoroughly review them as well. So I did basically one every Sunday is what I would do. I think the first one I might have then skipped a week before doing the next, but like the 4 weeks leading up to the day of my test date, which was also a Sunday, I did, or it was a Saturday. Oh no, I took my exams on Saturdays, not Sundays. Yeah, I would do it. I would try my best to simulate test date conditions, so something I did was I would vary where I took it, because I didn't want to get used to always studying or testing in one spot. So even in the library when I studied, there were my usual spots, but I would try to move around and not always sit at like the same desk. When I studied at home, there's not as many options, but that's okay. So the exams, I would take them like a exam. I would go and I would bring my lunch and my snacks, my water. There was only ever one I took at home. The rest I took the library, a computer lab on campus, a building near where I live that I could get into. I think I did an additional one at the library. So tried to vary it up, and I would sit down. I would, log in, get my scratch paper, my pencil, turn off my phone just like I would for the real day, and I would test. And I have here, so for each one I would use scratch paper. So usually for Chem Phys, which is the first section, I would take a decent number of notes because you're doing scratch work, and I would usually write down how much time I had left at the end just so I could keep track of that. So here I had 30 seconds left, and I made a note that I ran out of time. It's just good to know, and I could track over time. Like typically I would have a little more time on this section, but in this case I ran out. And then for biochem and psych-soc, I took next to no notes. There's usually not as much to write for that. But again, I wrote down, for those sections I had about 15 minutes left each. On this example, this was the 4th practice exam that I took. I kept track of all my notes and which exams so that I could look back, and I did look back. And for cars, I had my own page of notes because I did an outline when I did cars. There's a lot of different ways to do cars. That's just how I did it. So I would write paragraphs and just really brief what it was kind of about. If I'd had more time, I might have tried around more other methods with cars to see what worked best, but that's what I did, and it worked for me. It was usually tight on time for cars. That was definitely my tightest section. So then after the exam was over, I would go home, relax the rest of the day. It's a lot to take a full exam. I'd look at my score, obviously, and then I would try to do it the following Sunday, the next day, but sometimes it kind of got pushed a little bit because I would also be doing more book review then too, but I would make sure to go through the exam. That's another thing. You have to go through your exams to see what you missed, if there was anything you guessed right, because that's still a concept you don't know, but even though you guessed it right, you still need to know that concept. So I would go through each question. I wouldn't spend super long, but even if it was right or wrong, I'd read the little explanations they'd give to see, and I would try to remember. That's the sooner you can do it, the better, because you can kind of remember, did I know this? Did I not know this? And it's good to see. So I would make one page like this for each exam where I would write my subsection score, how many I got right total. I would go through each passage in discrete set and write down how many I got right, mainly to see if there's any passages that I completely missed a lot on, because that's, for me, was something I really tried, that I didn't want to miss more than one question on a passage, and I'd kind of write notes like, that's not good, don't do that next time, or good job if I got a lot where I didn't miss many on passages. And then I would also make a short list of concepts that I miss stuff on. I didn't reference these back very much, but I did write them down, and I would do that for each of the 4 sections. And then for another thing with concepts that I missed, if they were big concepts versus just little things that I knew came up a lot and that I would miss questions on, I would write them on this big page. It ended up being front and back, but I wrote on this the entire time, starting with my first exam all the way through the last. And I would write a concept. If it came up on the next exam that I missed it again, I would star it. So this came in handy for sure in the last week and a half when I was trying to review just a few concepts that I thought would be worthwhile. So yeah, that's how I went through exams. If you're curious to know what I got on my practice exams, on my first one, which was Next Step full-length 1, or whichever one's free, I got a 508, which was a significant increase from my diagnostic, which I was happy with. My second one, I got a 514, which I was very happy with because at that point I was 1 point away from my goal, which was 515, which my third practice exam, I got a 515, and I was really happy because that's my goal, and that was still a few weeks before test date. And then on my fourth scored practice exam, I got 511, which I was still a good score, but I was not happy that it dropped. And then that mainly concerned me because that was my last scored exam. The following week, I took the unscored AAMC exam, and that's what people would recommend, is do the unscored the week before your test, because you don't want to get thrown off by a low score or something. So I don't know what I got on that exam. As far as the practice exams go, the last one I tried really hard to directly simulate test day conditions. Some of the other ones I would start them later in the day than 8 a.m. because I'm not a morning person, but I would still try to start them pretty early and get going earlier. But the last one, I made sure I got up early. I even practiced driving to the test center that morning, made sure I could get in. Then I drove back to campus, went to the computer lab, and took my full exam. And it's good to practice, and I would take my full breaks and not take out my phone, especially on that last one. I sat there, ate my food. That's what you do on test day. You can't look at your phone or do anything fun. You just have to sit there. So then I will get into my final week and a half of, once I finish the books, what I did to study. So the final resource that I used was all of the AAMC online problems. So you can buy a pack. I think it was about $300, which is a lot, but I thought it would be worth it, which includes all of their online exams. And then they also have different question banks and sets, and some of the sets are from the old MCAT. I didn't end up using any of those because I didn't have time to get to them, but I'm sure they're still helpful, but it's better to use the ones that are more recent. So I ended up going through some of the section bank, which is more current and has questions from from Bio, Biochem, ChemPhys, and Psych Soc, not from CARS. And then they also have CARS Q packs. I went through those a lot because CARS, going into that last week and a half through my practice exams, consistently Biochem was my best score, and it was consistently a 130 as the subsection. That's what it was the day of too. I got that every single time, which is interesting. And then my next best section was typically ChemPhys, and then I don't know why, but CARS and Psych Soc was always my lowest. I know a lot of people that's their easiest, and that was the quickest section for me, but it was always my worst section score-wise for the most part. I mean, there was like an odd day where I did really well, but so going into test day that last week, I was worried about CARS and Psych Soc. So I did a lot. I sat in the library instead of doing my books. I did CARS questions. I did some where I didn't time myself and really took my time to try to get the answers right, and then I did others where I tried to get through them quickly because I know time is a big issue. I'm a slow reader, so I think that did help. CARS did end up being my lowest score on test day for a different reason, but, well, I don't know what the reason was, but, and then, yeah, Psych Soc, I think I did a lot of practice of that too the last week, tried to look through terms and stuff to get all of that down. And then, the official guide questions, which are from this book, you can get them in online form with this pack that I bought. So I did those online just because the test is online or on a computer. It'd be better to practice that way. So that was a good way for me to practice. It's kind of like a half-length test almost if you do all of those. So that was a good kind of final practice for me in those final days. And then, I even made a little schedule of what I was going to do the week leading up to the exam. I've kind of followed it. I didn't get through everything, but it is what it is. And then the Friday before the exam, people recommend you should not do any studying. I was really stressed about it, so I didn't do any problems, but I did flashcards, and I kind of leafed through notes, but I made sure. So I guess getting into how the exam itself went, I tried to get to bed early. I had everything packed the night before. My lunch was food I had been eating all summer for snacks and lunches. My snacks were the same snacks I'd been using in all of my practice exams. Not that that's a big deal. I just didn't want anything that was going to throw me off. So it was all foods I had a lot and knew that I liked. And nothing, like I didn't bring a sandwich or anything. I think I had yogurt, cheese and crackers for kind of lunch. And then I had fruit snacks for the snacks. I'm a good test taker. You don't get nervous unless they're really big exams. So I was naturally worried I'd be really nervous and not wanting to eat a lot. I unfortunately slept really badly the night before the exam. I don't know if I was just worried about waking up on time and not missing it. I think I got like less than 4 hours or something. I was just tossing and turning, which is not good, but that's what happened. So I got to the exam site early. I won't get too much into how it works because it's, they, in the podcast, they talk a lot about it, so I knew what to expect. You get there, you check in, give your fingerprints, you sign in. I just left my phone in the car, so I didn't have to worry about them having to check it. I didn't bring any test stuff in because I wasn't going to study in those last few seconds. And then, they have to check your pockets and everything before you go in. Every time they have to check you. So I went in and I took the exam. I'd say during biochem, I was kind of still nervous and awake and alert because it was happening. So I didn't really have any problems, or not biochem, sorry. Chem phys is the first section. So during that, I felt pretty good about it. I was still awake and alert because the adrenaline was still there. And let's see, I have my scores up just so you can know how the section scores. So I ended up getting a 132 in Chem Phys, which is amazing. The highest I ever got in that, which is 100th percentile. Clearly that went very well. And then the second, I took my break. The second, just walked around a bit to try to wake up because I got so little sleep, I was getting very tired by that point. So I went back in for cars. I was worried because I was really worried I'd run out of time because I had before. And the problem was now that the adrenaline had died down, I was very tired because in a lot of ways, because of all my practice exams, test day felt exactly like just another practice. I kept trying to tell myself this is the day, you need to be better. And not that I was skimping on anything, but it just didn't have I wasn't that nervous. I was tired. I'm not gonna lie, I was almost nodding off during the car section. Couldn't keep my eyes open for just a few minutes in the middle, but just from some of the dry reading, I don't know, and I was so tired, so I kind of had to shake myself awake and plow through the rest of the section. I finished it with a little bit of time left, so I did finish all the problems and all the passages, but I was worried because I didn't know if, while I was kind of groggy, if I might have not answered questions right or missed information. So cars did end up being my lowest section with a 128, which is 90th percentile, so that was by far the lowest, but who knows if it's because I was nodding off or because that had been a lower section for me in the past, but I'm still proud of the score for sure. And then I had lunch. I was trying to everything I could to keep myself awake for the next sections. Luckily, the last 2 sections time was not an issue for me, and it was not on test day, so biochem went really well, as happened every single time. I got a 130 on it. And then psych-soc, I also got a 132, which I was shocked with because that was always my lowest subsection on practice exams, and suddenly it became my highest. So that's definitely how I think I got such a high score, is that a lowest went to a highest, and that was a lot net gain of points for me, so that was very cool. And yeah, so then the exam was over, I left, I called my mom and talked to her about how it went, treated myself to some food, went home. You have to wait a month for your score, so you definitely think about it a lot at first, and I definitely kind of would think about the bad of like, oh, what if I get my score and it's not what I wanted? Do I want to retake it? How will I decide? Where's the cutoff? And then, you could also fantasize of like, oh wow, what if I open my score? And to me, in my wildest dreams, fantasy of what if I open my score, to me, it was like, what if I open my score and I get a 520? That would be amazing. And I got 522. So, yeah, I was so happy. Yeah, I actually was at a 2-day retreat that I planned over the summer, so I was in charge that day, and the scores were coming out, so it was a very stressful day. The scores, I got it during lunch, and I was like crying in the cafeteria, but yeah, called my mom. It was very exciting. I'm still very, very happy with it. I just feel like I put in a lot of hard work over the summer, and it definitely paid off. I'm really looking forward to applying, and how that kind of definitely opens up my options quite a bit more. And yeah, I feel very lucky to have gotten the score. But yeah, so hopefully, I think I got through everything I wanted to say. Hopefully this helps somebody. I know I watched a lot of videos like this while I was prepping, just to get tips from other people, and could kind of relax a little bit while still doing something kind of productive by watching tips from others. So hopefully this helps somebody. I know, like I said, study methods are different for everyone. Do whatever works for you. Do what feels right for you. I think that's the biggest thing. Listen to yourself and how you're learning, and do what works best. Try to get a good amount of sleep before test day, but it'll be okay. You'll make it through it. It's definitely a lot of content, of time, of everything, but hopefully it'll be worth it. You get a good score, and you can get into med school. And I haven't applied yet. I'm taking a gap year, so we'll see how that all goes when I get there. But so yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. I don't think I forgot to say anything. And yeah, hopefully this isn't too long of a video. And again, sorry about the sound quality. I know it's not great, but so yeah, thank you for watching, and bye.